Is that on? So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Social Work Services Committee of Tuesday, 10th of October 2017. It's just gone 10:30. And I have to say that I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will subsequently be available for public listening. Could I take a note of the Sederunt and apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We've got 19 members present this morning. 2 apologies from Councillors Little and McClelland.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Minute of the meeting of 21st of June. It says for approval, but this was actually approved at full council, so this is actually just for noting today. Are we happy to note? Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4, which is the Kinship Care report by Head of Social Work, Chief Social Work Officer. I'll invite Liz to speak to the report. Well, I should add, by the way, in terms of the report itself, you'll notice that there's a paragraph 3.18. Now, it turns out that that should not have been included in the actual report, but I'll hand over to Lauren Kringles, who can speak to that at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise members that we had some governance conversation as to where the report should be referred to in terms of the budget discussion, and this is actually in terms of the matter being referred to Policy and Resource Committee as a previous report, and I apologise. This paragraph following 18, the recommendation that the matter would be referred to Policy and Resource Committee should not have been part of this report, so apologies.
Thanks, Lauren. And just by way of a minor amendment, then, in the recommendations as presented in 2.4, it says see paragraph 3.18. That should actually say see paragraph 3.20 in terms of what's there at the moment. So I'll hand over to Liz to add to the report.
Good morning. As members will know, that we introduced the kinship allowance and procedure in December 2015, and in its present form it was then agreed by committee. Since then we've been operating the Kinship Care and Allowance scheme, and given that we're coming up to a 2-year point, we felt this was an opportune time to have a review at the scheme and to look at where there may be areas for some development of kinship allowances and kinship payments to certain groups, principally aged 16 to 18-year-olds who continue in full-time education. What we've done within the existing policy is bring together a clear set and a clear framework for working and assessing for kinship payments. We've brought that into line with the guidance that we've received across other local authorities and Scottish Government. There's still some matters that we continue to await government guidance on, but as currently, and we think the proposals and the review in the current paper before committee, it brings us well into line with other local authorities, and as well continues a fair and a good scheme that we have here in Dumfries and Galloway. One of the key points is the issue of residency orders. By the very nature of it, residency orders and the legal concept is directed within the paper, residency orders cease at the age of 16, and given that our eligibility criteria is for payment of kinship allowance where a young child or young person is subject to children's hearing arrangements or residency orders, what in practice this has resulted in is a number of 16 to 18-year-olds who are no longer eligible for kinship as we have set out and previously agreed. We have been lobbied quite considerably on that fact, and received a lot of representation, and we've taken this opportunity to have a look at that, to think, well, if what we are trying to do in terms, alongside our education partners, is closing the gap, set our young people who have been looked after in the most positive path, actually not including them in the allowance while they remain in full-time education may be seen as counterproductive. It's also very clear as part of how we work with children and families is that we want to maintain children and young people in their family groups, in their kin relationships, and we can't ignore that there is a financial pressure in that for that 16 to 18-year-olds who remain in full-time education. So therefore the paper presented today asks members to consider that and to look at extending the scheme to include those young people and those kin arrangements.
Thank you. Now, before I let members in for questions, Councillor Scobie, who's not a member of this committee, had asked to speak, and I'm going to allow him to do that. And I would say, Councillor Scobie, if you could appreciate there's business to get on with, and if you could keep it brief, please. Thank you. And concise as well.
Thanks, Chair, for allowing me to speak on this issue on kinship care. And again, thanks to you and the other groups that allowed me to speak to them yesterday on the issue of kinship care. There is things to commend in the report, and I welcome the report. And Liz has touched on one of them in terms of residency order and the age of 16 to 18. And this does bring it into line with parity with foster carers, which was missing in the previous arrangement. So I hope that the committee will agree to that. There's other issues that concern me in the report. Part of that, or the concerns are, at least one of them is, when a kinship carer or the eligibility of when we start paying a child. And as you say, to keep it brief, I believe that starts as soon as social work pass the child over. And bearing in mind that has the authority of a senior social worker, locality manager, as is the practice in the procedures. And if I read you from the Act and the guidance in the Act, read the timing of allowance, guidance for Part 13 of the Children and Young People Scotland Act specifies that the local authority must make kinship care assistance, which may include financial assistance, available to a person who is applying for a kinship care order for an eligible child. So local authorities should be paying allowances from the moment that the placement is made, not pending an assessment, and that's from the Act. So I would say that in the report that you have before you today, and what it is actually saying is that the payment starts after the 12 weeks, and I'm pleased to see that the 12 weeks is being brought into line, because that could and has been exceeding and well exceeding the 12-week period, some to 70, 60, 50 weeks and so forth. So I'm pleased to see that that's been brought into line. But I think that the committee need to look at when eligibility starts, and I believe that starts from the time that the child is passed over. and the Act would confirm that. My other concerns, and Liz spoke of it, is an application for a residency order. And in the policy and procedures, it talks about, only making £800 available to those who don't get legal aid. Some of these residency orders can run to £2,000, £3,000 and more £1,000, and it's to people who may not be in the position to pay that kind of money for the legal costs, etc. And I would ask the committee to seriously look at that again, as to whether they restrict this to the figure that's quoted of £800 in the report. So, Chairman, again, to keep it brief and giving me the opportunity, because there's a lot more I'd like to make, I would hope that you, in coming to your decisions, you can take into consideration the point of the eligibility and when a child becomes a kinship, or the order becomes a kinship care order, and when you start paying. And I would say that, as the order states, that's from the period that the child is handed over.
Thanks, Councillor Scobie. Welcome your input as always. Now, obviously there's a few issues that have been raised in there that I think would probably be appropriate to address at this time, and Lillian, I think you can maybe answer some of the questions, particularly about how we address what it says in the legislation, and also the £800, for example. So I'll hand over to you to answer that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for those comments, Councillor Scobie. If I could start with the £800 question first and foremost. We have taken legal advice from our colleagues in legal services, who have taken advice from the local bar in terms of the average cost for application for a residency allowance. Now, I accept that some families may wish to use their own solicitors or solicitors recommended to them. However, I think it's important for ourselves as officers to make sure that the public purse, in terms of funding and assisting families to make these applications, we go on the guidance of the local bar, and that is the figure that has been given to colleagues in legal for their view that they would be applying under the legal aid process for a residency order. So we feel that figure at this moment in time is appropriate. However, we do accept that that will perhaps need to be reviewed in the future along with colleagues from legal services. Hopefully that clarifies matters for members, but I'm happy to answer any questions on that. In terms of the 12 weeks process that Councillor Scobie discusses, I accept that there have been some cases that have gone on longer than the agreed 12 weeks within the policy. Some of that I accept is the responsibility of the service. Some in particular were at a time when we had a real difficulty in the west of the region with regards to recruitment and retention of social work staff, and we had a huge number of applications. So I accept responsibility for those cases, and we have, with the locality social work manager for children and families, put additional resource and process in place to prevent as much as we ever can that these timescales are met. But I have to advise members that we are facing unprecedented increase in workload, particularly within children and families. Some of those cases that went on for the number of weeks that Councillor Scobie has indicated were also as a consequence of some issues with regards to some of the biological families' input and challenge in terms of assessment, and it would be inappropriate for me to share that with the wider committee, but there are some cases where with our responsibility in terms of meeting that 12-week timescale, but we're absolutely committed to meeting that timescale. But I have to say that at some points those challenges are such that we won't meet it, but we'll try to keep those to the absolute minimum. In terms of the allocation of resource and allowance, I accept the legislation in terms of what it indicates. However, if you fully look into the legislation, it very clearly says that the social work department required to do a full assessment of need and suitability of kinship. We do place children on an emergency basis with kin who then ultimately end up not being assessed as suitable, and consequently they would not then be placed with that kin on a permanent basis. We always try to do that within the 12 weeks, but there are some situations where we will, on an emergency basis, with the information provided at that point, make the decision that that kin can care for that child. But ultimately that will not be then reviewed and assessed as a permanent placement. So consequently it would be inappropriate to start at the point of placement of a child for the payment of kinship. What we do, however, is for every individual case assess the financial need and the financial hardship that may be placed upon that family who agree on an emergency basis to take that child and care for them. Now, that discretionary payment will vary depending on the individual circumstances and dependent on the placement of the child. However, I would be confident to advise members that we ensure that families have adequate financial support to support that child that's placed with them. It will not be at the full kinship rate until the assessment is concluded, and that is a professional judgment at that time. Over and above that, we have been advised from audit, both internal and external, that if you place a child without a full kinship care assessment, then you are awarding an allowance without the full and appropriate process followed. So we have also been advised that in terms of audit purpose and ensuring that we spread the public pound to the best that we can for a scheme that is oversubscribed, and quite rightly we have to do those full assessments, then the appropriate way forward is to ensure that the kin caring for the child is financially supported, which we do through Section 25 discretionary payment, and we will pay the full allowance of kinship care when the assessment is concluded. And as I've already stated, we will always try to do that within the 12 weeks, and those circumstances where that doesn't happen are exceptional. And I do accept that in the past we've had cases in the west of the region that have been more difficult to conclude through a range of issues. I trust that answers, but obviously happy for any member to come back.
Thanks very much, Lillian. I think that helps us understand the breadth of the issue in more detail. Councillor Nicholson?
Yes, just a couple of things, Lillian. You mentioned, I'll take the residency order first, as you mentioned that, and the average cost has been placed at £800, but I think Councillor Scobie mentioned about, some at 2,500 or whatever it might be. Does that mean that, be some people couldn't afford to go through that process in a residency if it's a maximum of £800? What other help do these people get to actually go, reach part of the funds that they will need? The interpretation of the Act, I understand what you've said, that there are other parts to the Act, but what I don't understand, or maybe you can explain to me, is that what you've got there is you've got a locality manager that endorses, and understand that's endorsing. It could be an emergency situation that they say, yes, it's fine for that short period of time, which I can't get my head round anyway, but after the assessment, they're saying that they're not suitable for that. What happens to the one that are suitable and have been, if they've been endorsed from that time and they have been assessed as then being okay for that, why should they not get the money from the start of that endorsement? Because, the child's there, and I understand you could get so much money or whatever, it might not be up to that kinship care allowance, but, why, if they've been endorsed by the locality manager, why then, and they've been assessed as being okay for that 12 weeks that they've been actually had that child and carry on, why did they not get that money?
Thanks. Lillian, do you want to answer that?
Thanks, Councillor Nicholson. In terms of the application for residency order, what we've been advised through legal services and the local advocacy group is that we have a range of solicitors that will do that full application through for the cost of £800. That is the average cost, and that is the application that would be made via legal aid. Some families may choose to use not a recommended solicitor or not a solicitor that would do it for that cost, but that's a personal choice, and clearly what we would offer is a list of solicitors that will do it for that cost of £800. And I think it's important that we protect the public purse and don't have a different level because a family choose to go for a more expensive solicitor. Clearly that's a decision for members to consider. In terms of, you talk about a child may be placed on an emergency basis and then information that was not available to the social worker or the locality manager at that time may come to light via PVG checks or may come to light when a multi-agency meeting is held and partners share information that we, at the time of the emergency placement, were not aware of, and consequently we would then deem through that assessment process that that child should not remain with that kin. Or indeed you may get a challenge from the biological family that brings information that we were not aware of. So it is down to the gathering, the assessment, and then the professional judgment as to whether that child is appropriately placed or not. In terms of the financial award, we're very clear that once someone has been approved as the appropriate kinship carer, then we would pay that allowance from that point. I accept that there will be a gap in the initial payment, but we will make sure that we make discretionary payments in terms of covering the financial cost of looking after that child. And there is an element within that we have to ensure that we maximise the benefits for everyone involved in the scheme. So I think in an ideal world of unlimited resources, we would like to back payment, but the reality is that we do not have the resources to do that for every single application. And sometimes we also have to find out the benefit in terms of what the kinship carer is receiving. Some biological parents will immediately sign over the benefits, some won't. So we do have to do a full assessment in terms of the financial implications as well. So it's hugely complex, but we always look at each case and try to award discretionary payment in terms of fairness, and then ultimately the kinship care allowance following assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Carruthers.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to yourself. Thanks to Councillor Scobie, and thanks to Elena as well for actually outlining what the Council's view is in regards to Councillor Scobie's points. And I think, come back to what Wally said in regards to, thank him, because in broad terms he's highlighted this kinship care policy and certainly given me a clear understanding to the potential pitfalls that might be there. Taking on board first the 12-week timeline, what I've heard, Lillian, I think is that we've had the reassurances to say that we have failed with this in the past, but we'll all make every attempt, and it's beyond an aspiration that we will comply with this in the future. And I would imagine, so the point in regards to, so we can monitor that, have we got is this a key performance indicator we have against that? That's the first point. I need a reassurance in regards to that, just so we know we can actually keep an eye on that as a committee. In regards to the £800 and whether that's enough, I suppose you've said that that's under review, so we're looking at that just in case there is hardship, I think, financial hardship on particular people, and that's the point that's being brought up. There may well be different charging levels from different solicitors, but ultimately I think if there's a financial hardship on a particular family, when they're attempting to do the best for their kin, I think we need the reassurance that if this review is going on, when do we actually see that? Is it coming back in a report? Is it an annual thing? Is it in 2 or 3 months' time? Just when is that, please?
So a couple of things there, particularly in terms of how we monitor the 12 weeks and also how we review the upper limit of the legal support.
Thank you, Councillor Crothers. Yes, it is a KPI for social work services, and certainly within the Chief Social Work Officer report that will come to committee and within our monitoring process in terms of quality assurance, certainly happy to bring those reports back on a regular basis to members to give the assurance that whenever possible we're keeping to those timescales, and certainly Liz within her functional group and her reporting mechanisms in terms of performance, the locality managers have got a clear criteria to report back through the senior management of social work and also the children's services group in terms of meeting those timescales. So happy to bring any monitoring report required to elected members. In terms of the fees, we have links with legal services who have regular consultation with the Faculty of Advocates and the Bar Group locally, and that is on their agenda where there to be an increased cost in terms of those residency applications. We also have access to the awards that are made through legal aid, which anyone has access to, so we will be keeping an eye on that. But this policy is regularly under review, and it will certainly be reviewed again when the legislation changes are clear from the Scottish Government. So I'm happy to bring a review back on this policy at whatever time interval elected members require, but I would say that this is a policy that will be under constant review because it's a constant changing legislative framework that we're required to work within.
Thank you. And just if you want to quickly come back, Ian.
Just a will be quick, Chair. Just in regards to the review coming back, happy with the fact that it's under constant review and so on and so forth, but I suppose the real issue for myself is, as elected member, if we've got a particular family with a complex case and it goes beyond that £800, that family isn't actually going to experience any hardship, and financial hardship, I should say, and just the reassurance round about that.
I think, Councillor Crothers, with every single individual case in social work, we would give assessment to that for every family, and clearly if there's representation, we would give due process in terms of the assessment as to whether we needed to provide additional support. However, we do have to be cautious in terms of our precedents, and we're trying to be prescriptive and give that equality across the whole of the region.
Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got three short questions. One is similar to the concern raised by Councillor Carruthers, in that you say that the guidance of the local bar is that residency order would cost £800 plus VAT. But are there exceptionally complex cases when those recommended solicitors would charge more than £800? And in those cases, is there discretion to award more? Because this says may be provided up to £800, and that doesn't sound as if there's discretion to pay any more in an exceptional case. That's the first question. The second question was about the approved kinship carers. I hear what you're saying about not being able to award kinship care allowance during the assessment process, but once somebody has been approved, is there anything to stop them having that allowance backdated to the time at which the child was given into their care, rather than be the time when their kinship care was approved? And the third one was relating to 3.10, which states that further guidance from the Scottish Government and COSLA on the interpretation of placed with involvement from the local authority is awaited. I wondered if you had any more information about when that might actually happen and we might get that guidance.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. In terms of the up to £800, that would be the general starting point for us. Clearly, some solicitors will have a different process, but the actual application for residency orders is fairly straightforward in terms of the application. There will be exceptional circumstances, and as I've already indicated to Councillor Clowers, we would look at that in each individual case. So there is discretion within that, but what the information we have from colleagues in legal services is that in terms of the actual residency application, it should be no more than £800 is required. And we've taken that guidance both from local and national in terms of the application for legal aid. But every case, as I've said, could be considered. In terms of the backdating, I think I've already indicated that in an ideal situation with unlimited resources, we would want to give that consideration. However, we do pay discretionary payments until the assessment is complete, and in some cases it is almost the same as a kinship allowance. Clearly in other cases it won't be as much, so it is an individual case, but we do not have within the policy or the budget at this moment resources to back pay every single application as is made. So that is something that clearly elected members may wish to consider. In terms of 3.10, we have no indication as yet from the Scottish Government as to the guidance which has been ongoing since 2015, and I certainly know that it's been lobbied by COSLA and Social Work Scotland in terms of trying to get a clear outcome in terms of the legislation.
Thanks for your responses. 5.9.2 doesn't read as if there's any discretion. That's my main problem. Is it says maybe provide up to £800, and it doesn't actually read as if you would have any discretion if it was an exceptional case.
Thanks. Maybe we may not pay it out of the kinship, but we would pay it from other discretionary budgets, so apologies if I wasn't clear about that.
Just in terms of, can we get that recorded so that's clearer in the text? Thank you. Just on the note of the Scottish Government guidance, I think it might be something to consider in terms of going through our council's lobbying strategy to actually refresh that. I don't know if that's something that we could do through this committee as a committee, so that we actually put the pressure back on in terms of getting the guidance back in terms of what we're able to do in respect to that. I don't know if you want to add something, Lillian.
My understanding, Councillor Thompson, is that would need to be remitted to full council, but certainly we could provide any information for full council to add that to the current lobbying strategy.
Members happy to include that when we go to the recommendations? Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much indeed. Chairman, I think most members around the committee, I think actually everybody, would see this as simply an extension of the early intervention prevention type agenda with respect to looked after children. And after all, we have extended our responsibility to support children until age 26. So the notion of supporting them to aged 18 while in full-time education seems to be entirely logical. But my question would be, and people have underlined this, I've noticed that it has been underlined, the issue of full-time education. And I would like to know, because I think it's actually incumbent on us guarding the public purse, how do we know that that actually is being undertaken, that full-time education is indeed a condition, because that's what it's sounding like with respect to this allowance.
Thank you. Can I pass that over to you, Liz?
That has certainly been an area of debate. How would you describe full-time education? The most straightforward part from that would be within the school, whereby 16 to 18-year-old remains on the school roll and may be in receipt of EMA. Hopefully, we're education are looking at expansion at EMA scheme to see how that sits with kinship. So in terms of the school role, we can check that quite easily. But some young people may be part in the school, taking a college course or a college course. But we have links through education and skills development and the local college. And as part of corporate parenting, we have established a local group at college to look at destinations. As you may know, young people may have positive destinations, which include a college placement, but there's quite a significant fall-off from that by the end of the first term. So this group is hoping to be able to capture that, and we could certainly tie our kinship allowance arrangements in with that. And if the principle of extending the kinship allowance scheme is to support young people in their education and their training, then we felt that was a logical set of rules, for want of a better word, eligibility that would allow us to take matters forward at this stage.
Do you want to come back, Jane?
Well, I mean, that sounds to me not an absolutely clean way of monitoring. I'd like to know what the system is of being absolutely sure that we are capturing times when a child falls off that particular role or list or out of a college. So that's really what I'm after. It's being tight.
Thanks, Jane. I'll hand that back to Liz so you can follow up.
Yes, I agree. When not all young people who go to college and may not complete the positive destinations will be subject to kinship allowances and kinship care, but for those ones within kinship, they will still have a child's plan. So we have the further support of the child's plan in the review and the scrutiny that will come within that. So although there is a wider issue and a broader scope in terms of where vulnerable young people continuing their training and education. But for the sake of this kinship policy, we would be looking at a continuation of the child's plan.
Thank you. Councillor Sloan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just to go back to the point that Elaine had made earlier. I'm having difficulty understanding why, in an emergency situation, our experts place youngsters with kinship carers that they think are suitable. We then go through a period of assessment, jump through all the hoops, and after that time we'll say, but we're only, even if you're found suitable, we're only going to pay you from when we decide, not from when you first applied. It seems as though we're using a delaying tactic to save money.
Do you want to answer that again, Lillian?
Thanks, Councillor Sloan. I think that we've been clear under the audit purpose, and in terms of the assessment, we need to conclude the full assessment before we can award the full payment. We do make discretionary payments, and we do ensure that the families are supported financially. But it's important for us to ensure that when we are audited, when we are required to give assurance in terms of how we spend the public purse, we cannot pay kinship care until the full assessment is concluded. And as I've already stated, there are some cases where we make the decision on the information that we have at the time, and then other information comes to light through that 12-week process. There are some families that we have had no knowledge of until the emergency situation, and we make that judgment at that time, and then it proves that there are issues for us placing permanently with that kinship carer.
Thanks, Lillian. Tommy, do you want to come back?
Just very briefly, Chair. I mean, I could fully understand if during the assessment period it's found that individuals are not suitable to be kinship carers, then under no circumstances would a payment be made. But if these people are found to be suitable, why aren't we paying them for their time? I mean, it's got to cause hardship somewhere along the line for some of these kids and their families.
I can only assure elected members that we do make discretionary payments to ensure there is no hardship.
Thanks, Lillian. Councillor Dougie Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to paragraph 3.7 in relation to the allowances paid to kinship carers, I recognise the comments that have been made about the resources that we have available and which Lillian Kringles has available to spend on services, but the cost of living has increased over the last 2 years, and I note that the allowances currently paid are in parity with foster carers. Lillian might not be able to comment on this, but I'm aware that there's a review ongoing of temporary foster carers' allowances. Just wondering if you were able to give any indication of the implications for the current allowances paid to kinship carers.
Liz, are you okay with that?
We are not reviewing foster parents' allowances. Foster parents' allowances we discern through the guidance of Scottish Government and nationally look at where we have parity with it. What we are undertaking is a review of our fostering services in terms of additional payments we make, to bring some payments for mileage costs into parity with other parts of the service. So we're not looking at, I know that we're looking at the actual allowances, we're looking at some of the additional costs that we incur through our fostering scheme. And again, that's to bring parity across the service and also to look see if we're getting the best use of our scheme and monies.
Could I also advise Councillor Campbell that obviously in terms of the guidance from the Scottish Government for the payment of foster allowances, we would take that into account as and when we received that.
Do you want to come back, Dougie?
Yeah, if I may, it's kind of off track here, but I think there's maybe a wee communication issue with temporary foster carers, because my understanding is some of them believe that the allowances are being reviewed, and I'll leave that with you in terms of communication. But just to have an assurance that the current payments are not going to be reduced.
Okay, I can give you that assurance. The current payments are not being reduced, and indeed these payments are increased, and we follow all guidance to make sure we are paying the current and the proper allowances, so that we do that. And where there may be some issues of backdating that come into that, we do that for fostering allowances. And I can give you an absolute assurance that's not what we're reviewing. I'll take your point back, because that miscommunication can unsettle people, and that is not what we're looking to do. And I'll take that back to family placement team to take action on that immediately. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Does that satisfy you, Dougie, for now? Yeah, okay. Are there any further questions before we go to the recommendations? Okay. So at 2.1, we've been asked to agree the revised Kinship Care policy and procedure in accordance with the recent Scottish Government legislation. Obviously, there's a few comments there in relation to the reviewing of the £800 excuse me, figure, and the discretion around that and how that might be drawn, but not from the Kinship Care pot. Are we happy to agree that, Councillor Crothers?
Happy to agree, Chairman. I just wondered if I just put some scribbles down at 5.9.2, just at the very end of that paragraph, even if it was in brackets, just to say that this can be varied in exceptional circumstances at the discretion of the social work department. And I think it's quite clear then that if £800 looks, we may pay up to £800, but actually we can go above that in exceptional circumstances. And I'm thinking predominantly around about financial hardship.
Are members happy to include that, to capture the element of discretion? Yep. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it wouldn't come out of the Kinship Care money, is it? So
it would come out of other discretionary social work
so
budget.
that would need to be explicit within that, so it's no...
We're happy with that on that basis? Yep, thank you. 2.2 is to agree the amended eligibility and assessment requirements and financial support to 16 to 18-year-old young people in kinship care placements who are subject to residence orders. Are we happy to agree? Thank you. And then we've been asked at 2.3 to agree to extend the current policy to cover 16 to 18-year-olds in full-time education and have been subject to residence orders. That will total 82k in 2017-18 as per paragraph 3.13 and a further 41k paragraph 3.16 in 2018-19. Could I just ask before we determine this, when we talk about the 82k, it does reference in the papers about the calculation not taking into consideration deduction of child tax credit. So is that the true figure as we know it, or do we have any more information on that just now? Sean, is that okay if you take that?
Thanks. You would expect some reduction to that from when we assess if they've got child tax credits, child benefit, etc. It's very much in individual circumstances, so we didn't put an estimate on it. But if they were in receipt of child benefit and child tax credit, you could probably expect about 20k for those seven arrangements. But we don't know the full details of them until we financially assess.
Thank you. On that basis, are we happy to agree 2.3? Thank you. And 2.4, we're being asked to note the pressure in kinship care allowance budget arising from demographic growth, and that should read see paragraph 3.20 in terms of the current papers you have before you, which equates to 159k, and that will need to be accommodated within the overall budget for children, young people and lifelong learning. I'm happy to note. Thank you. And 2.5, note the extension to 16 to 18-year-olds as described in the report creates a further budget pressure for 2017-18 of 82k, see the recommendation we've just agreed, and an additional ongoing 41k from 2018-19, see recommendation 2.3 as per table 1. This is to be managed within existing resources. The ongoing requirement for additional funding will be addressed as part of the process of budget setting for 2018-19. Are we happy to note that? Thank you. Final thing, in terms of the discussion we've had, is to request that lobbying of Scottish Government with regard to kinship care be taken forward as appropriate through the Council's lobbying strategy. happy to agree to do that? Thank you. Apologies, Councillor
What
McGregor.
exactly are we lobbying for? I mean, I picked up this point last week in a committee, that the lobbying is only successful if we have an absolute direct reason for doing so. A question.
I think in terms of 3.10 in the report, this was in 2015, I think was the last time we'd actually had any official lobbying into this, but Leyland, can you maybe add something to that?
It's with regards to the legislative changes and guidance with regards to residency orders that we've been awaiting.
Councillor Murray.
Just a further point that there was discussions with Scottish Government and COSLA, so maybe this is something we should be raising with COSLA as well.
Okay, happy to do that. On that basis, can we agree that? Thank you. The next item in front of us is the sensory support tape service. So we have a brief history of the tape service, which was hosted from within Sensory Support Team and Social Work Services, and this is in response to concerns raised directly with members by the volunteer readers. Angela, do you want to add to this report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The report outlines a summary of the history of this part of the service and gives information on the current status. You will see from the report that demand for the service has significantly reduced over recent years and that alternative service providers are available, including the Council's own library service, as well as national providers, which actually provide something in terms of a much more enhanced and comprehensive service to people with visual impairment. I'm happy to take any questions that members have on the report or recommendations.
Members have any questions? Councillor Murray first.
Thanks, Chair. Members will be aware there's been a bit of correspondence from some of the service users on this issue, including one who this morning has emailed councillors to say that they weren't actually told that the service was being withdrawn. So a little bit concerned if people are not actually weren't aware that this was happening. The other thing, that there was a suggestion from one service user suggests that the money from the See Here project had been used to buy sound boxes and memory sticks, and then we were then told that we couldn't use the memory sticks for security reasons. I'm just a little puzzled as to why we bought memory sticks in that case, and also why memory sticks can't be used for security reasons, because I understood that there are ways that you could secure memory sticks so that other viruses and so on don't get onto them.
Angela, do you want to try and address those?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Murray, could I just clarify if the recent correspondence has been from a volunteer group or from actual service users? I think
it's a service user, and it just came out this morning. They're not a service user. Oh, they're a volunteer, right? Okay.
Just to distinguish the two groups, first of all, there is reference to the See Here funding within the report. We can provide further detail to members if that would be helpful. We are in receipt of the See Here funding, and that is being appropriately applied to the wider sensory support service. With regard to memory sticks, the issue is one of security and the Council's firewall, and the BTS, our technical team in ICT, advise us that we are not able to use memory sticks in any circumstance, either through officers or third parties. Yes, there are services, and RNIB is one provider that does use that media, and that is something that they then take responsibility for. If we are supporting that use, it wouldn't be possible for us under our existing security procedures. And you will recall that we have had a cyber attack quite recently applied to the Council and to NHS. So guidance from technical experts is that we can't use those.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of observations first, just and then a question. First observation is on the Appendix 2, result of service users. it doesn't actually apparently ask the service user if they want to continue using the service, not just for the fullest information, because when we make a decision, we should be given all the information that's available to us. So we've never asked the service users if they actually want the service to continue. We've been asking them what we do as an alternative. And although I realise that's not the purpose of the report, I think that information still have been there. The other thing in 314, we've given 20 USB players to Solway Sound, and then we gave a small number away to Solway Sound. That's not the right language to use. We should be providing them to support services, no give them away, because that sends the wrong message out, I think. But the question is, this service, I think, should have been transferred to the IJB because they're a budget holder. Therefore, we shouldn't be supporting a decision to discontinue this service, just my opinion this. We should be presenting it as a budget pressure to the IJB and asking them to decide how to deal with it. Because all this will do will present us as the villains in the piece, removing the service, when in fact we have no control over whether this decision to continue the service or discontinue is made here.
Are you happy to take that, Angela?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Dempster, I think the recommendation is that we work in partnership with IJB regarding the future of the service. The suggestion proposal is that we recommend or that we support a proposal to discontinue the service given the levels of demand. With regard to asking service users, the colleagues within sensory support have, wherever they've been able, made direct contact with service users and explored with them what their needs are and how those needs might be met. And the professional view is that those needs can be better met by an alternative provider.
Councillor Dempster to come back.
I'm not arguing that at all. I'm just saying to Angela, what we should have been given was information. If service users like the service and want to continue, we should have been told that, although it's no part of the consideration today. And the point I'm making to Angela is, I know exactly what the paper says, I know why it's saying it, but since we don't have the authority to continue the service, we shouldn't be putting any proposal up. We should just be identifying it to the IJB as a pressure.
Happy to do that, I think, yeah. Okay, any further questions on the report? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm a wee bit concerned that we maybe haven't followed some processes within the council, because when you read 3.2, they really do seem to have been shoved from pillar to post and not given a clear vision of just where they're going. And I have emailed Lillian in the past, as you know, with regard to correspondence, which I'm sure others have had, and not really had much in the way of good follow-up and in coming to a conclusion. And it just, the whole thing does not sound very professional, quite honestly. And I would hope that there is a process in case another situation like this arises, because I don't want to see us going through a similar situation.
Yes, I can give that assurance, Councillor Wood. It's something of a legacy service, if you can accept that as a terminology, that we discovered was part, a kind of extension of sensory support, if you like. The managers of that particular part of the service are no longer with the council. We've had to, in a sense, pick up the pieces and discover how that was how it had been managed previously. The accommodation move is unfortunate. We had to vacate Irish Street premises. We were offered the Ray Street premises, which have not been ideal. I think lots of issues have been raised in terms of accommodating the volunteer group. Our focus going forward is on service users themselves and what best meets their needs. And either the council's library service or the RNIB national service products seem to be much more, as I said previously, comprehensive and fit for purpose than we're able to provide on something of an amateur basis up until now, to be honest.
Councillor Wood.
I just want to reassure Angela. I mean, I like the content of this report. I would like to see the service improving and coming up to utilising modern technology. But what I do want to do as well is to learn from the lessons from the It's just diabolical the way it's been handled. It really is. And it's embarrassing. And as an elected member getting emails as I've been getting, it's like, what is going on within this department? So can we possibly look at what has gone wrong, how we can resolve it for future situations like this?
Yes, by all means, and that's part of the review, is to capture what has gone wrong and how we learn from that when we move on. Absolutely, yeah.
Let Lillian in just to add to that.
Can I also say, Councillor, would absolutely take your points on board, and we've had significant email correspondence. We have tried significantly to engage with the group of volunteers. We've managed to engage with a significant number of volunteer readers, but not all volunteer readers were prepared to have that engagement and conversation. So whilst we will reflect on our process and procedure and give you that assurance, there has been some challenges within that process.
Okay. Councillor Carruthers next. Ian, that is.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I just think I'm absolutely fine in regards to agreeing the recommendations. I just wonder if we should put a 2.7 that recognises part of the discussion today that we'll actually procedurally write to the volunteers and say, listen, thanks for all the help up to now, and outline what the process is. That this is actually now under the control of the Integrated Joint Board, and they'll consider it at a future date, and it's for so that transfer of responsibility is actually moving to them. And I think on the back of the emails that we've had as well, we do thank these volunteers. That kind of retrospect, because it takes us back a step, takes care of a lot of the issues that have been raised. I think we need to do that, but then point them in the right direction. This actually lies within the remit of the Integrated Joint Board.
I mean, I think clearly we have to recognise in some way the contribution of the volunteer readers over the years, etc. And obviously, given the nature of the consultation, as is described in the papers, that seems eminently courteous. I think, but, I'm sure the rest of the committee would be happy to do that as well as part of an additional recommendation. Yeah. Okay.
Chair, sorry, if I could just give you assurance that all of the volunteer readers have been formally written to, and of course not in with regard to the decision today, but previously, to let them know that this was the process that's ongoing, and to thank them for their contribution over the years. But absolutely, we'll confirm the decision today in writing to them as well.
Okay. I now have Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much. I echo other councillors' feelings about thanking volunteers. I think that's extremely important. What I'd like to sort of understand in all of this, and I see in paragraph 5, well, but both paragraph 3 and paragraph 5 talk about corporate and service reviews of the administrative functions, rationalising business support. And paragraph 3 talks about the issues of reconsidering adult social work, paragraph 3.4, structural changes within adult social work. Now, in order that I and the public understand why these things happen, I think we ought to probably refer to budget templates so that we know where this has actually come from. Because this is going to happen quite regularly, and I think it's important that we know what budget saving has been anticipated and where this is coming from. And so it should flow, and we should be able to see as we move from decisions made to implementation by staff. And it's not absolutely clear to me from this report, Chairman, where this has flowed from.
Thanks, Councillor Maitland. I'll let Lillian speak to that.
Thank you, Councillor Maitland. I acknowledge that we should have been more specific with regards to the health and social care integration process, which changed the structure of adult services, and I'll certainly take that as an action for future reports.
I don't have any further questions at the moment. So if we go to the recommendations, 2.1 is for noting. Are we happy to note that? 2.2 is also note the alternative accessible services. Happy to note. 2.3, note the reducing demand for the tape service as detailed. Thank you. And 2.4, note there is reducing output from volunteers for the tape service as detailed in the report. Thank you. 2.5 is to agree to support the proposal that sensory support team assist the few remaining users to transfer to alternative sources as detailed at 3.17. Thank you. And agree to support, finally, at 2.6, a proposal to the Dumfries and Galloway Integration Joint Board to discontinue funding for the tape service.
I certainly don't agree with that. We don't have the financial authority to not continue or to continue the support. Therefore, we should be agreeing to advise the IJB of the budgetary pressure associated with this service. And I think that's the language we should be using, because the IJB control the provision and future provision of this service. We don't. And I think we should be saying it's their issue, we're advising them of it. We shouldn't be, as a committee, proposing the discontinuation of a service we don't have any control over.
Yes, please do, Lillian.
I'm just wondering, Councillor Dempsey and colleagues, if it would be that we agree to advise the Dumfries and Galloway Integrated Joint Board of the review of the service and the outcome for consideration.
That would be a brilliant way of wording it, Lillian. I wish I'd said that myself.
Councillor Crothers, did you want to?
It's maybe relevant. I don't actually see the actual need for that. I just want to should have changed that to thank on behalf of the committee, even through yourself, Chairman, thank the volunteers. And just, I don't know if I actually need that. Tell them, I'll make them aware of the decision made today in regards to the committee, and it's actually the responsibility of the Integrated Joint Board from here on in.
I think in terms of the process we've carried out as a council, in terms of the consultation, it would probably be appropriate. I'm not sure if it needs to be a recommendation or if we need to just record it as an action that we do as a committee recognise volunteers, inform them of the decision, and then point them to the direction of the IJB in terms of understanding how sensory support services can be delivered in future. So I'll just check with governance here. Should that be a recommendation or an action point? Or?
If you're wanting a official record, you can certainly add it into the recommendations to thank volunteers.
Shall we do that then? Yep, okay, thank you. Next up is item 6, which is the Integrated Workforce Plan, Health and Social Care, and we have James McDowell to speak to the report. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I can just give a quick update on the report. As it says, the report asks members to consider the refreshed Integrated Workforce Plan. It's not a rewrite, it is a refresh after 1 year. It was developed with reps from all partners, including trade unions. It provides updated data where possible. It provides updates on actions in the original plan from last year. And there's case studies in there of where where progress has been made in those actions within the report itself. There's also further actions for the coming year. And then the progress report on the plan will go to the IJB or even this committee if so required. So happy to take any questions on the report itself.
Thanks, James. Do you have any questions from members? Councillor Murray.
I suppose it's just being a little bit nitpicky, but I thought some of the language was a little bit obscure. I'll refer you to page 68 of 94 it says the role of the service as the social work service has never been so vital, and it requires demonstrating and is supported by strong and effective leadership both locally and nationally. And I'm not quite sure what that means and what you're asking of whom, really, in terms of that statement. And the other thing I think really was that you're talking also in the next page about the pressure on care at home services. Now, some of that is actually out with the council workforce because it's actually care service providers not being an insufficient number of carers and so on with the care service providers. I just wondered how that can be addressed. It seems to me that something the council has very little influence over.
James, are you happy to take those questions?
Yeah, through Chair, yeah. I'm happy to take those comments back to the authors. So, as I say, there was many people involved in writing this, so I'm happy to take those comments back and bring it back to the...
I mean, because I think if there is a demand on national and local, in terms of national and local leadership, I think we need to be a bit clearer about what we're asking and whom we're asking.
There is the point you made there about that sentence, the role of the service has never been so vital, and it does scan a bit unusually, so maybe you could check the wording of that one. Any further questions, or are we happy to agree that we've... Well, beg your pardon, Councillor Nicholson.
Just a quick one, and just the workforce plan, you take the right people, right skills, right place and right time. Has all aspects been taken into account regarding future preparedness for people coming into the area? For example, it might be about migration, 1,000 people that's expected into different areas, and the complex needs of maybe some of these people, and some of the care they might need in the workforce to do that. Has that been taken into consideration?
James?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, again, using the partners and the expertise that the partners have, again, that's been factored into some of the actions as we go forward. They've highlighted that there are some recruitment issues with regards to specific posts and where those posts are, and I think using their expertise, it's been factored into the plan as we go forward for the coming year.
Councillor Dempster first.
It's just from my time in the past on the IGB, there was a recognition that in Nithsdale there was an urban and a rural differential, if you like. And I see we're talking about a one-team approach is being developed in DG1 and DG2, and names and objectives to keep Faculty Hospital, whatever. That should be right across Nithsdale. It shouldn't be area-specific, because that's the very thing that we tried to prevent when we set up and were a shadow board, and even at the initial integration board, we tried to ensure a fairness and an equity across the whole of the region. That was the one thing we desperately tried to avoid, was breaking up and or specialising in just one or two areas.
Thanks, Jim. I'll let Lillian speak to this.
Thanks, Councillor Dempster. This report reflects the previous year, and that was a pilot area, and it will be rolled out to every area. So maybe it's the use of the wording, and we'll be more clear about that. That was the test area.
Thank you.
Councillor Diggy Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Just one quick question that has arisen in my mind following Councillor Nicholson's question. The rollout, will that go right across the region, or are you only referring to Nithsdale?
I know, referring to the full region, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. The question I wanted to ask, as you read through the plan, there's reference to recruitment problems, both the NHS, social services and the third sector. We've got a rapidly ageing population. I think this is something we should all be very concerned about. But I think the plan lacks a bit of flesh on the bone of how we actually address that in the future. Could you possibly make some comment on how we're planning to do that?
Lillian, do you want to take that up initially?
Thank you for that, Councillor Campbell. It's a hugely complex area in terms of recruitment and retention, and encouraging staff to come to work in our region. So we're trying many different methods in terms of trying to, in the west of the region, set up some access to public housing for doctors, for social workers, for teachers, and that's a piece of work that's been led with colleagues in NHS. In terms of social work services, we have a huge issue nationally. There's a 32% reduction in qualified social workers, and over and above that, there's a reduction in social workers in terms of filling the university courses. The applications are not there. So nationally, there's a whole range of issues that we need to look at in terms of the social work profession and how we try to raise the profile in terms of this being a worthwhile profession. So we are at the national table. We are working with colleagues to try and ensure that we can work with colleagues in the university to have placements, so that we can show the work that we're doing and hopefully encourage people to come and work here. In terms of the care at home workforce, I think that's even more challenging given the low unemployment rate in the area, and we do have to take into account looking at different streams of workforces, and there's certainly a subgroup looking at that and how we can further encourage people to come to the region. But it would be remiss of me not to raise with elected members the huge challenge, particularly in social work, that we have in keeping qualified social workers and indeed encouraging them to come to the region.
Thanks for that. I think it's a topic we'll have to focus on in the future. it's not going to go away. I think we also should acknowledge the additional burden that is placed on social workers as a result of staff shortages, and they're still expected to deliver. And I think we should all acknowledge the dedication that we have from those social workers.
Thank you for that. Staff will appreciate that endorsement, Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. And Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose it's more of an observation, but I would be quite keen to hear if there is an answer, and that is in Appendix 1. If you look at male GPs compared to female GPs, female GPs appear to be much more resilient. Indeed, their numbers have increased where the male has decreased quite markedly. Is there a particular reason for that? Because there was a perception in the past where professional females tended to go off into the wilderness when they were having a family and then maybe return, but it doesn't seem to show up in these figures.
James, do you want to hazard an opinion about that?
Yeah, through you, Chair, all I could do is maybe try and find out and come back to you. Off the top of my head, I don't have any idea of why that's the case. But I'll see if I can find out and come back to you.
Well, the reason I'm curious is because that might be the area that's worth investing in rather than the other.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Thanks, yeah. We've seen this before at the Integrated Joint Board, and the only comments I would make is same spelling mistakes and such like, so it's obviously a copy and paste. And even in its introduction, it refers to the draft strategic and locality plans, but they've all been fully endorsed now and they're no longer in draft format. So it is a matter of catch-up. Again, I think it'd be good for these things to be addressed.
Can we capture that, James, in terms of just revising any typos? Yeah, thank you. Okay, if we go to recommendations then, are we happy with 2.1 that we've considered the integrated workforce plan refresh? Yep, thank you. 2.2 is to note the workforce plan will be reviewed on an ongoing basis and progress reported to the Dumfries and Galloway Integration Board. Are we happy to note that? Councillor McKee, thanks.
Could we add in there that if there's any changes proposed before they're due to come back to us, that the changes are referred to us for consultation inside that period?
Yeah, if we're happy to include that, so we actually get sight of anything that comes back from the Organisational Development Steering Group, imagine. Yep. So we get to see that as a committee. Thank you.
That covered the workforce plan as well as the Integration Organisational Development Steering Group.
Thanks. So for both 2.2 and 2.3, if we're noting those but request that updates around any reviews, annual reviews, come back to this committee so we have sight of them. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, item 7 is appointments to outside bodies. This is basically in the back of the 21st of June meeting where we appointed quite a few people, but there was a number of vacancies still available. So it's come back to this committee for a consideration. So obviously you'll have read the report. And I'll just go to 2.1 where we're being asked to appoint one member to Alcohol and Drugs Support South West Scotland as detailed in paragraph 3.6. Are there any nominations? Councillor Maitland?
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Could I propose Councillor Ian Howie for this particular appointment, please?
Thank you. Any other nominations or seconders?
I'll second Ian Howie.
Okay, thank you very much. 2.2, to appoint 2 members to the Dumfries and Galloway Area Support Team, as detailed at 3.7. Councillor McKee, I understand you want to add something to this.
Yeah, I think as some of you know, this refers to the children's services. What has happened there is this Galloway Area Support Team, the work that we used to do with the children's panel advisory committees used to involve councillors in quite a bit of work. We were involved in the recruitment and monitoring and all that sort of thing. And nowadays, I've attended one meeting of the area support team prior to the election, and there's absolutely nothing discussed at these meetings that is relevant to us as councillors. As an aside, I've written to the head of the Children's Panel Advisory Committees in Edinburgh. I've still not got a response from him, but I believe he's been on holiday this week. So we'd hope to have a response from him in the next week or two. And the views, my understanding is that the views that I've expressed in my letter to him are similar to the views held in most other council areas in Scotland. So unless there's something specific and somebody wants to sit on this, I don't think there's any need at the present moment. Hopefully by the next meeting we'll have something proper to report and indicate whether it's worthwhile putting additional members on or whether we need members at all.
Thanks, Councillor McKee. Does anybody, on the back of that and having read the report, does anybody have a urgent need to put themselves forward for one of these two positions? Okay. I think maybe we'll just wait till some words come back in terms of what's going to happen with that. Thank you. We've also got 2.3, appoint one member to the Dumfries and Galloway Care Trust as detailed at 3.8. Do we have any nominations for that? Bearing in mind we already have Councillor Little as one of the two members that we're able to put on that. No takers? Okay. 2.4, to appoint one member to Dumfries and Galloway Champions Board for Stewardship as detailed at 3.9. Councillor Howie.
And can I nominate Councillor Maitland, please?
Do we have any other nominations or do we have a seconder? 2.5, to appoint one member as a substitute to the permanency panel as detailed at 3.10. No takers. Okay, and 2.6, to appoint one member as substitute to the temporary fostering panel as detailed at 3.11. Councillor Nicholson.
Quite happy.
And can we get a seconder for that, or do we have any alternatives?
More than happy to second it. It's really a question of any of the other issues. Do we make life more difficult for these panels if we don't have substitutes, or are we sufficiently covered?
In terms of the ones with where we've been asked to provide a substitute, I think that's really kind of backup. In terms of the other ones, Councillor McKee has outlined the area support team issue, which is still to be resolved. We already have representation on the care trust, etc. It's just that we have another vacancy, which, I mean, to be quite frank, if the level of interest is there, then somebody will come forward to take that. And I think, but we're covered, I think, as far as what we need to do. Thank you. Okay, item number 8 is the external scrutiny of social work services, March 2017. And we've got Heather Collington to speak to this report. Heather, anything you'd like to add?
Just to note that as we've brought this report through in the last couple of years, we've aimed to sort of have all our services working at the level of good or above. And we've brought through continuous reports for you on services where they were not doing that. So we would brought through services who were awarded a 3, which was adequate. I suppose I'm pleased to say that in this report we've got ourselves to that position whereby all of the services that are currently included in this external scrutiny report are at good or above. And in particular, I suppose I'd want to note the 2 ARC services who are now at 6s, which is what, you know, as much you can get really. At excellent, Newton Stewart in its previous inspection was at a 6 and it has been able to maintain that. So again, that's really good. And we now have Stranraer joining that as well. So from that point of view, I would hope that you would see that this demonstrates really good progress for the set of regulated services that we have. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Heather. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just really for the record, in some cases, they seem to be in 4 quality indicators assessed, and there's been a mark, if you like, for 4 quality indicators. In others, there's spaces or not applicable, and just an explanation for the record as to why that is.
Thank you, Heather.
Yes, what happens is when the Care Inspectorate undertake their inspections, they don't always inspect every indicator for every inspection. So where you see the blanks are not applicable, that would apply, usually it would be blank where they have chosen not to on that occasion. But where the not applicable sits is usually where, for example, it's a service where they don't have an environment, so it's not an office-based service. So the community support services, for example, they would never have the environment inspected because it's not applicable to them. But they would have the other. So that's the reason why you see that difference.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, in that case, I mean, obviously, I think we should recognise good practice and... Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm happy to recognise the good progress that's been made. Excellent. We're noting the outcome of the scrutiny activity and at 2.2, considering the progress being made in respect. Are we happy to do that as a committee? Thank you. Item 9 is just the minute of the 24th of April meeting for the Child Protection Committee for noting. Are we happy to do that? Good, thank you. No further business. End of meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance today.